You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to thewritingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. I am so excited to be back here this week because of course I was off last week and cancelled the show, which I absolutely hate doing. Really do hate that. And I had a terrible cold. So I looked terrible. I sounded terrible. You would not wanted to see me on the show and definitely wouldn't want to listen back on the podcast and hear me that way as well. So I'm grateful to be back. And yes, I have missed you all. It is true. I definitely have missed that. Thank you for tuning in already. The guys in the chat is great and great new opener. Thank you. I will discuss that very shortly. Brandon's in the house, Anya and Linda and everybody in there. Thank you so much for tuning in. So the intro, very cool news. Over the past 2 weeks, although I have had a terrible cold, that intro right there was recorded by the amazing voice actor Jason Anthony. And you might not have recognized him from maybe pictures or maybe the tweet that I sent out, but he is the voice of many characters for the past, 20 years maybe. He's worked on like CBB children, Disney children's shows and things like that. But also he was the voice of a Lego Star Wars character. He was in the Lego Movie 2. And this is also crazy. He was the command control computer for Star Trek Discovery, which is really super cool as well. So he very kindly did that for us. And, that is now an intro. If you missed it, go back and listen at the end of the show. It will now be the show intro for all shows moving forward, including the podcast. So that is super cool. Linda says, never feel bad for self-care. I do appreciate that. Thank you. It does put the pressure on, but it's worth it, to come back rearing for today. I know you guys, some of you tuned in yesterday to the brand new Wednesday Wordle, which I kind of put together yesterday. A crazy Wordle attempt because I'm terrible at that game. And I know a lot of you are very good at that. There was a 5-letter Wordle game like this on the screen, just you guys helping out, an 8-letter and a 10-letter Wordle game. And I couldn't work my brain at all to figure that out. But you guys were really good in the chat. And Kevin, who is a superstar, actually nailed all 3 answers. And without him, I think I might still be there doing that today. Chris rubbing eyebrows was... why would I be rubbing eyebrows? Elbows with some big names. No, not at all. I kind of guess I do that on this show, but it never feels that way. They're all such wonderful people, you see. So there's some news, guys. In a couple of weeks, I might reveal some news about a conference thing. That's very cool. But on the 20th of this month, which is only a couple of Fridays away, I believe, at 9 p.m. UK time, so an hour later, so you American people can actually try and enjoy this a little bit more. The fun panel show is coming back, and I know how much people love that show. That's exactly why it's coming back. And I have 2 teams of 3, 6 authors ready to get silly for you guys. The impression round will be back. The pitch wars will be back. And that is going to be a lot of fun. So clear your calendars if you can, the 20th, 9 p.m. UK time, the panel show. And we've got a great discussion show coming up, which promises to be a really valuable one. And it's from all the tweets that we put out recently that discussed author tips. And all the community contributed. And there must have been about 90 replies to that with their kind of specific tips on how a new author can develop what they're doing and the tips and the writing tips there. That is going to be a very valuable discussion show, which we will discuss. And Brandon says Kevin was a rock star on Wordle. Yes, he was. And next Friday, that's my book launch day. Brandon, so very cool. We will definitely have a little chat about that on the 20th then for the panel show. Or in fact, we'll see if we can get you on there maybe. Well, let's have a look at that. So let me stop rambling because I'm looking forward to tonight's guest, who, by the way, there he is, Brandon. We were just Kevin, we were just picking you up about the Wordle, how you smashed that yesterday. So thank you very much, you superstar of the Wordle world. So tonight's guest, guys, someone who actually doesn't live too far away from me, which is weird because of all the guests I've had on from all around the world. It's kind of amazing that I haven't had a Welsh author on before. And tonight I can say that I've had a Welsh author on the show, which is fantastic. But it kind of feels like perhaps we should have met in a pub somewhere celebrating that person's book launch today. But let's do this anyway. We are celebrating, by the way. So tonight's guest is someone who actually in 2019 was discovered as a new writer by a publisher at the Primadonna Festival, which I believe is in Suffolk, which is not too far away from where I used to work. I'm very excited to find out about how that happened, kind of what that meant for her and what it meant as an author. And I'm guessing that was kind of good news, because she is here now promoting his second book, and she's done lots of short stories in there as well. So that story must be a successful story and has changed things for the better. So let's get that guest on. Let's find out how they got to where they are, what their inspirations are, and how all that kind of pans out. And you guys remember, there are question times for you as well. You can send questions in throughout the show, but remember, at the end there's a specific section for you guys to ask questions as well. Please feel free to do so. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Louise Mumford. Hello, Louise.
Hello, everybody, and congratulations, Brandon, for his book launch, which is coming up next week. That's very exciting.
Let's not talk about Brandon's book. We talk about your book.
Always got to talk about someone else's book.
Oh, I know.
I want to congratulate them, because I know how hard it is.
Definitely. We'll celebrate Brandon's book next week, definitely. But congratulations to you. Happy book day.
Thank you. Today is the day when I always pointed the wrong direction. Yeah, see, I did it again. When The Safe House is out today. So I'm very excited. It's my second thriller that's been published. So I'm only 2 books in, and it's still all new and lovely and wonderful.
Amazing. But thank you for joining me, by the way. How are you doing?
Good. We were talking beforehand about how publication day can be a bit weird. Well, I think just the whole writing process is weird, because you spend a huge amount of time on your own with people who only live in your head. Yeah. And you don't really talk to that many actual human beings. And then suddenly, come publication day, you've got to put on your extrovert hat, and you go and you talk to people, and you're hopefully you're fun and exciting and chatty, and you have to do a lot of promotion, and it's a bit weird trying those two sides. They don't really join up very well.
I mean, definitely, it's a bit of a crazy thing, and this must, in fact, your first book was out in 2020 in December, right?
Yes.
So was that before COVID?
No, that was so COVID started in the UK in March 2020, didn't it?
Oh, okay.
And then my book came out in December. So my book actually came out. It was called Sleepless. You can't. I pointed the wrong way again. Behind the flowers. And that actually came out when just as Christmas had been cancelled. So we were on our 3rd UK lockdown. Christmas had been cancelled, and I was there going, buy my book. Don't worry about Christmas. Buy my book instead. Yeah.
I think the most amazing thing about COVID was a lot of us authors thought, people are locked in the house, they're going to want to read. But it was such a distracting time for everybody. It's kind of like the last thing people wanted to do.
It was, I mean, I had a lot of brilliant support from my local community. So I live in Cardiff, and I had a lot of support from people there. But it's very strange how people coped with lockdown. Some people just read loads, they could get in and wrote a lot. If they were writers, they wrote a lot, and other people just couldn't. It was almost as if something had switched off in them without that kind of social interaction. So it always fascinates me to see how people cope in extreme situations, and it was certainly extreme in 2020.
Yeah, well, that shows how kind of messed up my mind was. The fact I thought that was maybe before lockdown.
I know.
The fact that was months and months into it. There you go.
I actually, I had a big birthday. My birthday is the 10th of March, and the UK went into lockdown literally the week of my 40th birthday. So I turned 40 and brought on, I feel, the apocalypse. Sorry about that.
No. What a welcome to your 40th birthday,
It is, it was lovely. Yeah, great.
Oh, dear me. Cool. So what we're going to do is, Louise, we're going to play. We're not playing. This is not the game that I mentioned earlier. We're going to do round 1, which is the road to writing. So I'm going to play this little video, and then we'll find out exactly kind of how you got to where you are now, if that's okay. Okay, Louise. I mentioned earlier that obviously there was a kind of festival you were at, but before that even happened, if we rewind the tape right back to when writing was just a thought in your mind, what was that time and kind of how did that develop for you?
Because I mentioned turning 40, and I think definitely in the years leading up to turning 40, so when I was about 38, I thought to myself, I've had quite a long career in teaching. I was a teacher for 15 years. And though I loved my job, it was really exhausting. And I was kind of coming to the end of my energy for it, though I still loved my classes. And I was thinking, well, I've always said that I liked writing. And I'd done a creative writing part of my degree back when I was in my early 20s. And I thought, well, if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it?
Yeah.
So I think everybody thought I was a bit nuts because they weren't wrong. So my husband and I have got a business as well as my teaching. So what I said was, I'm going to give up work as a teacher for a year. And in that time, I'm going to try to, and naively, I thought I could get published in a year. And I was like, yeah,
it's a good target.
Plenty of time.
Yeah.
Time to do that. Gosh. I have time left over. So I gave myself that kind of goal to do it. And I'm sure my husband thought, you'll be back teaching within a year. But he was incredibly supportive as well, because that's the kind of guy that he is. And so I was just like full steam ahead, write the book, try to get the book published, try to find an agent, all of those things.
So can I just ask then, when you said you tried to get published in a year, was that an actual thing that you sat down and thought, right, I'm going to plan this out. I'm a teacher now. I want to write. So let's make a plan. There's my year target.
Yes, I gave up teaching when I was 38. So when would you give it up? In the summer of 2018, that would have been. So then I wrote the book, and I didn't finish the book probably until about mid-19. Sent it out far too early to agents, as you do. Don't ever do this. Don't just finish your book and think, yeah, it's done.
Yeah.
Send it out there. Because it's not. You need other people to read it and tell you the bits that don't work and all of this stuff. So then I met my agent and I met my publisher in the summer of 2019. So I kind of just scraped in on my target, because we signed the contract about February 2020. So
okay, but that was at the Primadonna Festival, was it?
It was. So the summer of 2019, so I'd written the book, and I thought, right, what I need to do now is become a part of the community. I need to meet people. So I signed up for all sorts of different things, and some of them were really good, and some of them were awful. And you met brilliant people, and you met horrendous people, and all of that stuff. And the last thing on my summer of discovery, as I was calling it, was the Primadonna Festival, which was in a brilliant old mansion house in Suffolk on the Dyball estate, I think it's called. And it's founded by Sandy Toksvig and a group of women who were influential in kind of media and business and the arts. And they wanted to create a slightly different festival. And what I really loved about it was how inclusive it was.
Yeah.
And how the people who were the VIPs, and there were some fairly big names there. They weren't kind of roped off in a VIP area where nobody could ever see them, apart from, when they were on that stage for 20 minutes, they were wandering around, they were getting food, they were talking to people. And it was just such a really, really friendly, lovely atmosphere. And that's where I met the executive publisher of HQ and Mills.
So was that something that, it sounds a wonderful festival, and we mentioned Harrogate that you might be going this year, possibly as well. Might meet you there, might have a drink there as well. Fingers crossed. But it sounds a wonderful festival. And was it something you were actively doing, trying to find an agent at that point, or was this something that just kind of, happened for you?
Oh yes, I was deep in my many rejections from agents. I had so many rejections. It has to be, I don't think I ever counted them, but I have to have had over 20 rejections from agents, and rightly so, because the book wasn't ready. But what happened was I would always, when I went to these places, these festivals or whatever writing weekends, I would always take my first 3 chapters, which I would print off, and I'd print off a synopsis, and I'd have like and I just joined Twitter. So I had my little Twitter handle with like my 5 followers, and I'm sure that 3 of them were bots. So I would have that to give to this mythical person who had asked me about my work. And then suddenly in that summer, in that festival, somebody did ask me for that work. But that was, I do want to make the point that that was only the start, because when Lisa read it all, she had lots and lots of notes for me as to how to improve the story. And that was the scary bit, because it was like, this is my chance. Don't mess it up, because you might only get the one.
So when you had said, you know, it wasn't ready at that point, but then you were kind of picked up at the time, was that still the same sort of draft as that book? And then the edits came?
It pretty much was, yeah. So I mean, what the agents had been rejecting, I think I had slightly changed the start. I was rubbish at starting Sleepless. I had no clue where it was meant to start. I think I had about 6 different beginnings by the end. So I think the beginning was slightly different, and that is probably what hooked her in. But it was funny because she said it's just nice to read things and make my own decision as to whether I like it or not, rather than having it sent in by an agent who's trying to guess what her taste is. And that's the difficulty, isn't it? I think with the traditional publishing model, the agents are trying to guess what the editors want, and then they're trying to take on authors that they think will fulfill that. And actually, sometimes there's something a bit different is quite nice.
Fantastic. That's amazing. So Sleepless is, obviously we'll talk about your new book in the next section, but Sleepless was something you'd written based on personal experiences, like with insomnia, for example. And one of the reviews was for this was very good, from Philippa East, who is the author of Little White Lies, which is amazing. Said it was an original and action-packed thriller. Now, what grabbed my attention for that was an action-packed thriller is something that we've seen many times in the world. So how did you think it was an original thriller when you're writing it? Did you aim for that, and kind of were you surprised when that comment came in?
Yeah, I didn't know I was writing a thriller. Until it kind of became a thriller. Then, you know, halfway through, because I don't plan anything, and I know this is horrendous because I know Philippa does. I do not plan my work very much at all, and I've tried to, because now when you're talking about book 2 or book 3, my agent and my editor, they want a synopsis of what's going to happen, and I've discovered that I'm horrendous at them, because I don't really know what's going to happen until I'm in the story, and then the characters take it, you know, and the action happens. So I didn't know I was writing a thriller. I never thought I would be a thriller writer. I certainly didn't think I'd be kind of that, especially in Sleepless. It's not so much in The Safe House. I keep pointing to the wrong one. It's not so much in The Safe House. But I didn't think I would be that kind of actiony thriller writer. I thought I'd be more kind of magical realism, like Erin Morgenstern or, you know, Neil Gaiman. I love Neil Gaiman and his books. And then the story that came out was this very kind of tightly plotted, very pacey thriller. So I just went with it.
So if are you okay to talk about insomnia and kind of how that affected your writing? So it's obviously something that your personal experience was very well influenced into the book, but did you kind of feel like that was a kind of a superpower to throw in there, or was that kind of a vulnerable thing talking about put in the book?
I really wanted to speak about how I experience insomnia. People experience it in many different ways. Because a lot of time in fiction and in films, when people struggle to sleep, it's almost like, oh, they have one bad night's sleep, and then they get up in the morning and they have their coffee, and then they go off and solve a murder, and run away from the villains and whatever, fall in love, whatever it is that they do. And I think I wanted to try and portray just how bone-crushingly exhausting day-to-day life is when you don't get enough sleep. And I'm sure a lot of people know this. New parents know it, definitely. People who suffer with sleeping and insomnia definitely know it. But you only have energy for a certain amount of things in the day. And the rest of it just becomes a kind of washed out grey nothingness where you try not to trip over things or make a fool of yourself. And so when I was teaching, all of my energy, that little bit of energy reserve that I had, would go into that day. And then it would almost be like I'd have this big adrenaline crash in the evening. I'd get in about 6 o'clock and I wouldn't be able to move. And then, of course, I'd wake up then by 9. And, of course, I'd be trying to go to sleep. So my body would be like, oh, no, we're awake now. You wanted us to wake up. So here we are. We're awake. Let's think up stuff. But it's definitely from my childhood. I didn't sleep when I was a child. My sister was a completely normal sleeper. She's a normal child. And then my poor mum had me. And, we'd be up still playing games of hangman at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't understand why people slept, because the world was so exciting and interesting. Why did everyone go to sleep for 8 hours? So I just didn't.
That is incredible. I mean, when you were I know what you're saying about going to work and all that energy's gone there and you come home and crash. But when you were awake in the night times, and obviously it must be very frustrating and you are trying to get to sleep, but were there times there where stories were developing in the night as well?
Yes, they do that more now. I find that even if I don't write, I'm not at the computer at midnight, because I think that just wakes you up too much. My brain does definitely come up with plot points and story points and sentences, good sentences, when you think of something that go, oh, that explains it well. I'll just write that down. My brain does seem to work creatively at night much better. I don't think it didn't do it when I was a teacher, but then I suppose it did in a way, because I was thinking of lessons and how would I teach that poem, and what could I do to get that class interested in similes, which is a tough call, and all of that.
I mean, being a teacher in itself is very creative, and it creates sparks that creative mindset off. So do you think there's a big connection? I mean, there's been a lot of guests that have been on the show that are teachers, and I'm assuming that is a connection there, that the creativity from developing these lessons and the resources, that becomes a more natural thing. Do you think that's correct?
Yeah, I mean, possibly that I've never really thought of it that way, but yes, teaching is very creative. I think I was quite overconfident when I became a writer. It's like, well, I've taught English literature.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I know how a book works. I've written essays on it. I've marked essays on it. And then, of course, it came to writing my own book, and I was all over the place. So that brought me down to earth very quickly. Wow. But yes, I think you are. I think the best teachers are very creative. I think the best teachers are also very adaptable. I think you have to work with what you've got. Some days that class is not going to want to do what you carefully planned the day before. They want to take it a different way. And as long as they're still learning something and there's an objective at the end, then you go with that. You learn to adapt very quickly.
Yeah, Anya says writing is a humbling experience. I think that is true. And the people reflect a lot of their own style and their life into their writing. So I think it's very makes you very self-aware as well, subconsciously. But okay, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into round 2 of the show, and we're going to do what we're going to do, part 2. What's the story? Of course it is. You can tell it. Yeah, I've had a week off.
You had a week off. You don't know what part 2 is. Could be anything.
Yeah, definitely. So part 2, what's the story? We're going to find out all about the safe house and kind of the good bits about that. So here's part 2. So Louise, let everybody know, if you can please, about the safe house.
So the safe house is about a young woman called Esther, and she is severely asthmatic. And so she has been told by her mother that the only way that she is kept safe is by living a very secluded life away from the polluted air of the general day-to-day life. And so she lives in this kind of very tightly controlled, air-conditioned bubble in the woods, basically. It's a reconditioned bunker, but a nice, a bunker with carpets and a sofa.
Smart bunker.
Smart bunker, yeah. Good bunker. And then one day a man appears at the front door and tells her that she has been living a lie and that everything her mother has said is false. And so she has to work out whether her mother has been keeping her safe or keeping her prisoner. So it's very much, it's much more of a kind of claustrophobic story than Sleepless, whereas Sleepless was kind of lots of running about and, they had the whole island to scamper about in. The safe house happens in only a couple of locations and it does feel quite closed in.
Yes, it's kind of like a dark Rapunzel story, isn't it?
Yes.
In that sense.
Yeah. I loved, I don't know if you've ever seen the film called Blast from the Past with Christopher Walken. I think it was early 2000s, though I could be wrong. It might be a bit later than that. And it's Brendan Fraser as well, the guy who was in The Mummy.
Yes.
And it's about this kind of mad scientist who builds a massive bunker under his house, preparing for a nuclear war. And then through comedy series of events, he thinks nuclear war has started, and he bundles his family in there, locks the door, which locks for something like 20 years. And then when it opens, they come out. And I loved that film. And the scene in particular was Brendan Fraser as the young man now, because he's grown up in the bunker. He comes out and he goes on the bus. And the first thing that it's just pure joy, because he's looking around. He's like, oh, look at the world and the people, and I'm so happy. And then he realizes, you can see it in his face when he realizes that he doesn't know how to get back home. He's gone so far and he has no way to get back home. He doesn't understand how the world works. He doesn't know anything. And that scene always stuck with me. I always wanted to write a character a bit like that.
Amazing. That's a great inspiration to have, based on something that you've been very much into. Brandon says it's a great movie.
Yes,
I do remember it now. You said I didn't click onto that until you said it. The time there was a limit on there and it locked. Yes. I believe there was a Cloverfield #2 film as well.
Yes,
that was much more of a kind of kidnapping kind of thing going on there. Yes. I think, but that was also a kind of similar experience, which was kind of disappointing for me because I wanted Cloverfield 1 to be #2. But it's an interesting concept because in the world today, especially in America and places like that, who have there's a lot of doomsday preppers out there, and they have these kind of things going on. And in the climate we live in today, especially with things like Russia going on, you never know what they're going to do, and people could be bunkering up now with the fear of that in their minds.
It's called the doom boom. So the doom boom, in the US is a real thing. I mean, there's obviously, because humans always do it, but there's a massive business around doomsday prepping. And I've been talking about this, that you can actually get in America, because they've got bigger backyards than we have. They've got more land for their houses, but you can buy a kind of oil tanker sized bunker and drop it into your back garden. So that's your bunker in case anything happens. And you've got a little life larder, they call them. So with all the food that you'd need to survive, not for your entire life, but for a good few years anyway.
I think if I had the space and the money, rather than build a man shed in the garden, I would have a very cool bunker. A nice bunker like in your book.
Yes, a bunker with carpet.
Yeah. Anya says many preppers live near me, and Brandon says tons live here as well. Sad and true about doomsday, but not many.
It's not so much about the world ending, actually. It's about the world continuing, being disrupted, and people not having trusting the government to look after them. It's a real mistrust of government and the kind of society, the structures that are meant to help and protect us. I just think it really kind of shows where we are as a society right now. We don't really trust much.
No, not really. So if we go back to the book then, one of the reviews was mentioning how the relationship between the mother and daughter was very good and believable. did you kind of feel that you had to judge that right, considering the dynamics they were in? You know, did you have to kind of ramp up the tension there to make it kind of suspenseful? Because I imagine in the same kind of building for majority of the time, it would be quite hard to keep that not entertaining, but you know what I mean. The dramatics there.
Yeah, it was a conscious choice to try and not make it. If I was bored writing, this is my general kind of touchstone. If I'm bored writing the scene, then cut it. It doesn't need to be in there. Very, very hard to create tension just in one place, but also a brilliant challenge, because it could, if you flip it, it could also help create tension being trapped in that one place as well. And I originally, when I wrote a bit of the first draft, which I binned, I got about 20,000 words in and binned that one. It wasn't the mum, it was Esther was with her dad. And I thought and it wasn't working anyway. And I thought, well, why have I got a dad? Why have I chosen to have a man? And I think I chose it because I thought that a man would be more likely to do the whole bunker thing and survivalist thing, and, you know, and think in that way. And I thought, well, hang on, a woman could do all of that just as easily. And as soon as I brought the mum into it, because it's almost like it stereotypically a mother's love is the fiercest kind of love, it seemed to work better.
I think you're right, because yes, I would judge that in the way that a man is more likely to have the bunker there, but also there's more, I believe people's assumptions are there's more trust in the mother in a relationship of a mother and daughter. So you would less likely to believe whatever may happen in that story. So I can see why that's gone in that direction. Interesting. So, I mean, wow, there's a great, hang on, where's my question here? I've got one down here for you. Psychological thriller. There's so many of those. Again, we talked about being many action-packed psychological thrillers, like we said before, but this is, again, a psychological thriller. Do you feel with such a genre that's so kind of staple there, that you had to kind of write within boundaries of that genre, or did you kind of feel that you could write expressively as you have done anyway?
I've got a really good publisher and editor, and they've never told me to, unless something's been rubbish. They've never really told me to change the story to fit the genre. And I think psychological thriller is actually, in my opinion, it's actually quite wide. You know, lots of things fit into psychological thriller, lots of things fit into thriller anyway. I think Sleepless definitely is a psychological thriller with speculative elements, so with, you know, slightly dystopian elements, though it's not a dystopian world. And The Safe House has got similar elements as well. So clearly my publisher doesn't mind me. I'm kind of dancing on the edge of the thriller genre and hoping that I don't fall off.
Great stuff. There's another review. All these reviews, by the way, were fantastic reviews, and these very small snippets, because some people have left like essay reviews, which is amazing. The commitment.
Bloggers and reviewers, I mean, it's not paid or anything like that, and it's just amazing. They read the book with such care, and they write about the book with such care that I'm in awe of them.
They do. This comment was quite interesting, because obviously they're thrillers in the sense of a thriller, but it says it's not a funny book in reference to The Safe House, but there is humor in the writing. Was this something you were aware of or planned, or was this just generic kind of your style showing?
That's just me. I'm grown up with a group of friends who are very willing to take the mickey out of everything. And it's kind of how we interact and show our love for each other. So yeah, humor is just, I think being a teacher, humor was a massive part of my teaching, because you make a kid laugh and they're on your side more. You know, I was always good with the kind of troublesome teenage boys, because I could just make them laugh, and then they'd be on you. They think you're cool then, and you know they'll do pretty much anything for you. So I love humor, and I think that human beings, even in the darkest times, you still find things to laugh at. Human
Definitely.
beings are hardwired to find things absurd and to find things to laugh at. So yes, I think, I really enjoy writing the funny bits.
I mean, dark humor is definitely a British culture thing. I'm not entirely sure about the American people in the audience here, whether dark humor is. I'm assuming it is. It's kind of similar.
Yeah, I'd like to see if what kind of humor in the comments. That would be interesting, actually. Yeah, because I'm not sure that the kind of very dark humor, like kind of the black books kind of thing, does that translate? But well, I suppose a lot of British comedy now has gone over to the US, though, so I think it's changing, isn't it? Really.
I definitely had some of the guests on the show that are in the audience, and some of those definitely have a good sense of humor. Brandon says, I do love dark humor, but it's not the same as British humor. So there is definitely a difference, but it's interesting to kind of see why, but I'm not sure.
Something like the League of Gentlemen, I don't think that would play out in the US, because you have to understand that village mentality as well, don't you? Which I guess you don't have quite so much in the US. I do love the League of Gentlemen.
Yeah. Possibly not. No. So of course, I mentioned earlier short stories. There are definitely a few short stories mentioned on your website. Were these kind of before you started writing Sleepless, or were they kind of around the same time?
No, they were after Sleepless.
Okay.
Actually, I wrote a lot of them we had a brilliant lockdown again, sorry. 2020, the spring lockdown in the UK. We had beautiful weather. It was really, really hot. Felt like we were all on holiday for that first bit of lockdown. It was before we went into lockdown 2 and 3 and, all the rest of them, and got a bit tired of it. And I remember sitting at the back and writing loads. Sitting at the back, that's very Welsh, isn't it? Sitting in the back. And writing these short stories. So yeah, I love the short stories because they're just little snippets of what I imagine is a bigger story, but I'm just telling a little snippet of it, and I love it. I know some writers don't like or don't write short stories at all.
Yeah.
They just can't, they just don't want to, but I really like them. I think do a lot with the form as well. I haven't really experimented much with the form of it, but you can. There are some brilliant, and there's some amazing British short story writers out there.
Well, a surprising amount of short stories have become successful movies in history as well. I'm pretty sure.
It's the Shawshank Redemption, isn't it? It's
not
called the Shawshank Redemption, his short story. It's called something else. But yeah, he's got lots of short stories made into films.
Yeah, definitely. So it's certainly has its place. Going back to the dark humor, Kevin says, I like dark humor. Linda says, also a fan of the dark humor. And Linda says, I may be the only person in the room to laugh at Monty Python reference, which is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, Red Dwarf, Red and Ab Fab.
Yeah.
I love Ab Fab. That is brilliant.
Faulty Towers for me is one of my all-time favorites.
Yes.
But brilliant. John Cleese, also Monty Python. So have you got any tips then? Let's go for some tips for writing, I guess, psychological thrillers or short stories, or getting into writing, whatever you kind of feel like you can share. What have you got for someone who may be watching or listening that is around maybe getting into writing, or their first book, or looking for some more sort of help?
So for the writing bit, in terms of writing a story, I always go with the character first. I think you have to know your character really well. They have to be a real person. You don't have to do the whole, what's their favorite color, or what they eat on Tuesdays, nothing like that. But think about them a lot. How would, as you're going through your day, how would your character deal with all the things that you're doing during that day? I think the best fiction has memorable characters in it, and it's the characters that take the reader along. In terms of submitting, don't submit too early. I think I've said this already. Write your manuscript, put your manuscript away for a month at least, then get somebody else to read it, or you read it first again, because you're going to find loads of things that need changing. And make sure you take the time to do the drafting. When you submit, it depends on what you want from the writing process, and think really hard about what you want. What kind of writer do you want to be? Do you want to be a self-published writer who has complete control over their stories and their vision? will get all the money that you earn from the books as well. You have total autonomy, but you also have to put in a massive amount of work in terms of cover design, and all of those things have to be professional. Or do you want to try the agent traditional publisher route? And that route is quite hard in terms of rejection. You've got to get your head around the idea of resilience, and because I mean, I'm a fairly resilient person, again, because through being a teacher, not every child was going to like my lesson, and I know that some kids didn't like me, and that's fine. I can say it now, I didn't like them either. So that, and I thought I was quite emotionally, strong, but I think when you get rejection after rejection after rejection, which you are probably going to get when you start out, it's quite hard to get over that. But you've got to see them as bumps in the road. It doesn't mean the road is stopped. It just means there are bumps in the road, but the road is continuing. You just got to keep driving along it. And then, and also remember that there are indie publishers as well, and they're brilliant. The UK and the US have got amazing independent publishers who will take work without having that agent as the go-between. And often it will be kind of a much smaller business, but you'll feel very as if you're on the journey with them very much.
It is amazing having rejections from publishers, but did you ever feel like it was, I mean, you mentioned you're probably going to get them. Let's be realistic. You are going to get them. I don't think anyone has never had a rejection. But have you learned from them? Do you learn from them, or are they quite hard to swallow? What's it like getting those rejections?
It's hard when you don't get anything back. So a lot of the time you would send stuff to agents and you don't hear anything. So you can't work with that because it's just a void. There's nothing to work with. But the feedback that I got when it was something that I could work with, I always did work on it.
Okay.
Because they are, at the end of the day, they're professionals and experts in their field, and they know what they're talking about. I think you have to think carefully where you get your advice from. Don't get it from the person next door, who knows nothing about kind of building a story. Don't get it from an English teacher either, because I thought I knew how a story worked and I was wrong. So yeah, get your advice, think carefully where you get it from, and then do work on it when you do have good advice.
I really resonate with the rushing it out there, because I did it exactly what you said. As a self-published author, kind of did it all the hard way, and tried to do it for free, and really thought I was kind of there. I was so not there, and I can even see that myself now. I've developed, like with writing, it's like good things come to those who wait. It really is.
Yes.
Slow down.
Well,
it's fine.
I don't think that I've written. I'm not sure if I should say that, because obviously this is a great book, but I don't think I've written my best book. I hope I haven't written my best book yet, because you want to have a long career and be able to build on all the things that you're learning. And I have huge respect for self-published authors, because you guys do it all. You have to do everything. And there are some amazing self-published books out there. So if we talk about the crime genre, LJ Ross started off as a self-published author and has now got her own publishing company. She's made her own publishing company, but she did it all herself. And I think when it's done really, really well, self-publishing is more than equal to traditional publishing.
Definitely. That she sounds a very interesting character that I think would be a benefit on this show. Definitely, if gone through that journey. If we jump very quickly back to the dark humor, Anya says Kurt Vonnegut. Is that the name?
Vonnegut?
Yeah,
I didn't
Vonnegut.
teach him, so I didn't have to say his name.
Yeah. Is an example of dark humor, which is different from British, I think. So potentially I might check that out afterwards and just have a little look at that.
He's the Slaughterhouse 5, because I did used to see it. His famous book is The Slaughterhouse 5, isn't it? I think I'm right on that one. So I used to see it on a teacher's bookshelf who taught sixth form, and I didn't teach sixth form. And I used to look at it and go, oh, that sounds like an interesting title. Never read it.
Kevin said it's not easy, self-publishing. Absolutely not. We're going to discuss that discussion show coming up with all the tips that people from the community left are going to highlight some of the horrors and realities of being a self-publisher without kind of putting people off. But it's one of those things that you step through and suddenly get that book out there and go, oh, marketing, what's this? And then it's like, whoa. But yeah, we'll look out for that show because that's going to be great. What we're going to do, part 3, community questions. I remembered this one. Guys, if you have questions for Louise or for myself or for both of us together to do with writing, to do with kind of life, whatever that may be, now is the time to send them in. And we will try and answer those after I ask Louise some dodgy questions. So here is part 3 of the show. Louise, when I said dodgy questions, your face was a picture to see. Not dodgy, don't worry, just off topic, perhaps some of them. So guys, yeah, send your questions in, please, and I will get through some of these. Louise, what was the last book or film that you read or watched?
So the last book was called That Bone Setter Woman, which is by Frances Quinn. She's a historical writer, and it was a proof actually because it's not out until July, and it's about it's a Georgian woman who becomes a bone setter in London. So you had doctors who treated, you know, kind of viruses and illnesses, and then you had these bone setters who would manipulate bones back into place and dislocated shoulders and stuff like that. And it's fascinating, and it's based on 2 real women who operated as bone setters in London, and of course were heavily looked down on by the male doctoring community. So that was fascinating. And what was the other one? The last thing I watched?
Film or TV series.
Film or TV? Oh, Yellow Jackets. I loved Yellow Jackets. It's on Sky, I think, and you can get it on Now TV. And it's a series. The first series is out. It's won lots of American awards, and it is about a plane crash of a football team, a girls' football team in the 80s, and they crash in the wilderness, and what happens to them, and it all gets very dark, a bit Lord of the Flies. And it's really, really good. It's got Christina, I never know how to say her name, Ricci, the Wednesday Addams. It's got her in it.
Oh, okay.
And Juliette Lewis. It's got Juliette Lewis in it as well, and I love Juliette Lewis. So I would recommend that. It's brilliant.
I'll forget about that, but you need to remind me. I'll try and get you to remind me. Yellow Jackets. I'll try and remember because that sounds very interesting. Yeah. And funnily enough, I was feeling a bit when I was under the weather last week. I thought I'm going to lie in bed, put an old film on, and just try and chill out. And I put on Alive. Do you remember that film?
Yes.
Well,
very similar.
Okay.
Tone. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Because that was a true story, and they got stuck up in the Alps, I believe, at the plane crash. The South African, no, it wasn't South African.
It was
Argentinian rugby team, perhaps.
Yeah.
And they walked over the mountains in the snow to Chile, which is incredible.
Yes.
Wow, what people do when they have to, eh? Okay, if you could take any story, whether it be book, TV, or film, and change the ending, what ending are you going to change and why?
No.
It could be for good reasons.
Ending that I would change. Okay, well, to be really sad, I love Anne of Green Gables, which is my favorite childhood book. I loved Anne of Green Gables, and I would definitely never have Matthew die. Sorry, spoilers. Anyone who's going to read it, Matthew dies at the end. Who's the uncle, beloved uncle? I would definitely not have Matthew die of a heart attack. Even when I read it now, and I know what's going to happen, and I've read it like 10 times, I read it and I'm still choked up. Matthew having this heart attack. I'm like, don't go into the field, Matthew. Don't go into the field.
Don't go there.
Don't go there. And he does every time, and has his heart attack in the field. So yes, I would definitely resurrect Matthew.
There you go. Brilliant answer. Anya says, Yellow Jackets. It's amazing, creepy as hell. Sold. I am sold.
Brilliant.
That sounds great. Okay. If you could take any character from the world of fiction, again, open to TV, film, or literature, and put them into your story or a story of yours or a new story, what character are you going to take and why?
Oh, well, I love I love Miss Havisham.
Who's that?
I've
Sorry?
already had a little bit of wine. It's already gone straight to my head. So I read Great Expectations. Oh, I think I was probably in about sixth form. I was quite late coming to Dickens. I thought I didn't like Charles Dickens. And then I read Great Expectations, and Miss Havisham I absolutely adore. Just the whole thing. You know, the fact she's there in her wedding dress and the clock has stopped and she hates all men, and she makes this girl, she creates this girl to be like a weapon to go and, you know, destroy some poor lad's life, and the whole feast and everything. So I would love to write something with Miss Havisham in it. I think she would work really well in modern day as well. I think she'd be brilliant. So yes, definitely. And I also love the myths, so like Greek myths. Medusa, I love the character of Medusa. So one of the short stories that you mentioned earlier is actually the character of Medusa, but I've just put her in modern day on a train.
Wow.
And I'm fascinated by all those kind of mythical characters, and I think there's so much mileage for them because they reflect human emotions. And,
Why did you put Medusa on a train of all places?
Of course, you've got to travel. You've got to get from one place to another. You know, do you think Medusa's learned to drive with all those snakes? It's very distracting. So no, I put Medusa on a train because she's a bit of an avenging angel. Basically, she hunts down, in the modern day, she hunts down men and kills them because she can, and she hates them, and she kind of saves and empowers women at the same time.
Brilliant. Okay, this one's a bit long-winded, but I like it. If you could bring any character back from an author, forget that. If you could take any author and bring them back from the dead, and you'll write an ultimate smash hit, like the best book in the world, on the basis that you had to then kill them for it to happen, who would you bring back? Why? How would you kill them?
Okay. That's good. Went very dark, that question.
It's gone dark.
It was nice up until that point. Then you have to kill them. Right. So this just seems cruel. As a undergraduate, in university, I used to love Sylvia Plath. I think every young woman goes through, if you study English literature, every young woman goes through a phase of absolutely adoring Sylvia Plath. I don't know what it is about us all, but we all just love Sylvia Plath. So I would choose a poet, an American poet and writer, and she killed herself. I think she was probably still only in her late 20s when she killed herself. She was married to the British poet Ted Hughes. It was quite a tempestuous relationship. And so I would bring her back because I think she died way too soon, and she was just a genius in terms of writing about emotions. So I think there would definitely still be a really good book in her, but then I'd have to kill her again, and she already killed herself, so that seems pretty mean.
Well, you both would get to write like the best book in the world. I mean,
right.
And then you'd have to get rid of it, yeah.
Well, it's pretty grim because she killed herself by putting her head in the oven.
Really?
Yeah, she did. She actually killed herself. That her children found her. It was pretty grim. So I really don't want to kill her again. So if I have to, I would drug her, so she wouldn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And then I would just roll her gently into the sea.
Off you go. Come on. I'm gonna have to look up what happened there. That's mind blowing. But rolling into the sea gently, I love gently. Yeah. Why gently? Anyway.
In case she wakes up. So
yeah. Come on. There you go. Oh, brilliant answer. Well done. Okay. What book would you take to a desert island? You could only read it once and over and over and over. So not once, but you can only take the one book. What book would you take?
Okay, I would have to take a Terry Pratchett book because I love Terry Pratchett. He wrote a series of books about a made-up place called Discworld, where there are gnomes and vampires and trolls and all of those things. But they're just they're very real. So they all have real problems and it's all very funny. So I think I would take my favorite, always quite hard, probably Reaper Man, because the Terry Pratchett has got a brilliant version of death. So his version of death is the skeleton, you know, in the hooded cloak, scythe. But he's, over the years, he's become fascinated by the human race. So he likes to have a curry, even though he can't eat it because it just goes straight through him. And he has a little cat and he rides the, you know, scary white horse, but he's called the white horse Binky. And he's got in his house, he's got all sorts of like little things to do with humans. And so I think Reaper Man, because I just remember reading that the first time around and thinking, I just love this world and I love this character, and the whole thing is just so funny. So, and Terry Pratchett is also very clever. So I've probably missed stuff in his books and I would find out stuff again.
Good stuff. I haven't read that and I'm desperate to. I think a lot of his books that I need to get involved with. Okay, I'll one more from me to bring it back to a more serious side of things, and I'll pass it over to the guys in the audience. What does literary success look like for you? What would be kind of, if you're looking back on your career, what would be the point of you thinking, you know, I'm happy with this? What would that be?
That's a really good one. You can, I think, and I've seen this happen to like a couple of writers, you can get very, very caught up in how many sales you're making and, you know, have you made the Sunday Times bestseller list and all of those things. And like, you know, are you in W.H. Smith or Waterstones or wherever? And I think we do have to remember as writers that a lot of that is out of our control. A lot of it is down to whether you're self-published or independently published or traditionally published. It's down to how much your publisher pays for certain things. There's a lot of money involved in all of these things as well, and how much marketing budget they've got, and, you know, all sorts of stuff. So I think for me, success looks like me still writing stories that I enjoy.
Yeah.
I think I would like to see, because I'm with a digital first imprint, so the main focus is on the ebook, and there is a paperback, and the paperback can do very well, but still the main focus is ebook. So it doesn't go into places like Waterstones. I think so. Success for me would be able to see my book on a shelf in Waterstones.
Amazing. It's good advice. It really is, because it's so hard for people in any sort of business, and self-publishing included, and publishing traditionally, and podcasting and YouTubing, that you get hung up on all the little stats, and it once you start doing that, it takes away from the joy.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important message to remember. Just do it for the love, and you can't go far wrong with that. So let's get some questions from the guys here. Anya's got a great question. If you had to be trapped in a bunker with a celebrity, who would it be?
If I had to be trapped in a bunker with a celebrity, who would it be? I do have a bit of a soft spot for Robert Downey Jr. I find he would be very entertaining. I think he's very clever,
Sure he
but
would.
I don't think that's the full reason why I want to be trapped in a bunker with him. But let's go for he'd be very funny, and he's very clever and very entertaining. Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. for his wit. That's what we're going with.
For his wit.
Okay. Brandon, Star Wars or Star Trek, a classic on this show?
Star Wars, Star Trek. Okay. Oh no. So I haven't really seen any Star Trek. Sorry. None. I've managed to avoid most of it. The only reason I've seen Star Wars is because my friends forced me to.
You will watch this.
I was literally kind of, you know, you're going to sit here. The new films are coming out. It was this. And I was like, no, it's fine. I've seen a YouTube video, and it told me the whole story in 10 minutes. I'm good. I don't need to see the films ready for the new one. I know the story. They're like, no, you got to sit and watch it all. So I'd have to go Star Wars because I know the story. But there are some Star Wars films that aren't very good. Sorry, guys.
No, I agree. It's amazing that you can these days just watch YouTube videos and catch up on an entire series or a film in about 2 minutes. It's really fun. And some series, it's really worth doing that instead. But especially things like Lost. Anyway, let's move on. Anya says Robert Downey Jr. would be great. fan of his there. Linda, thank you for your question. Would you prefer to live in outer space or under the sea? Which is a great question.
Oh, right. So my character in the safe house, Esther, that's why there's a whale. She loves under the sea. She loves whales and all of that sort of stuff. And she goes to an aquarium, and you've got the tunnels in the aquarium, and you can walk through and like pretend that you're under the sea. I love those aquariums. That's why I put it in, because I love those tunnels. And I also had, when I was about 10, a huge obsession with the Little Mermaid, to the point where you used to like wrap a towel around your legs and pretend like things. I was obsessed with, and Splash, the old Splash film from the 80s. I used to love that film. So it'd have to be under the sea, because I always wanted to be a mermaid.
Amazing, fantastic, great question. Thank you, Linda, and great answer. And we've done an hour already. That's flown by. Before we wrap up, Louise, let people know where they can find your book, more about yourself, and general sort of things they can buy from you as well.
Okay, so if you go to my website, which is louisemumfordauthor.com, that will take you to all of the different places that you can buy both books. Mostly it's Amazon, because like I said, it's digital first, so Amazon is the first place to go. However, it is also available as a paperback on, both books are available on bookshop.org, which is the website that also gives back to independent bookshops. So if you buy from there, part of that money goes to an independent bookshop. And I also have my local bookshop near me, which is called Griffin Books. It's in Penarth. It's Griffin with 2 F's. And they are lovely, and we'll get copies of things. But it is also an audiobook as well, so you can get it through Audible.
Incredible. The link to that is in the description, guys. If you want to scroll down, you'll see the link to Louise's website there. And by the way, I noticed, obviously, on your website, you had an interview with Will Dean lately, someone who's been on the show with us before. And you've gone to some amazing festivals around Wales, which I haven't done. So I need to find out a lot more about these and go and find them. So we'll have to definitely pick your brain about that one. Louise, thank you so much for joining me. Guys, thank you for tuning in. It's been an absolute blast. I'm so grateful to be back here after missing last week. So really appreciate you tuning in. For me, it's goodbye from Louise. Nice to see you. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.